Welcome to Pedal and Float. Today it's front brake. We're going to work on mastering your front brake so you can roll stoppies, brake on steeps and be really confident in stopping this bike. So I hope you've all enjoyed learning along with the track stands and practicing those. Next thing, we're going to really work on mastering front brake skills. Why do we need to use the front brake? Well, let's face it, the back brake is great for doing skids and hopeless for anything else. The front brake is the one that really does stop us, and it's the one that people are most afraid of. So we're going to get really comfortable and do some nice little drills to improve your feel and control on that front brake lever. Now the rear brake is absolutely hopeless. You can see there, back brake, hopeless for stopping us. Great fun for doing skids, but we're not going to need it to slow down. Everyone's nervous about using the front brake because what they're worried about is that. No one likes the thought of going over the handlebars, but there's absolutely no need to be worried about your front brake. If we learn to use it smoothly and with a bit of feel, we get out of that panic situation and avoid going out of the front door. Okay, to start off with, we're going to be off the bike. We're just going to work on the brake lever on its own. So what we're going to do is going to push the bike along. First bit of brake lever travel, we're just taking the slack out of the lever. So we're pulling it back till the pads hit the disc, and you can hear that kind of squeaking noise as the brake starts to bite. So just get a nice feel for that, and then what we're going to do, gradually build up that braking pressure and keeping it nice and smooth. Now the key here, once we've got it so we're pushing really hard, I want you to release it just as smoothly as you apply it. So we're braking nice and hard, and then we're going to release it gradually until we can increase our speed and walk off. Now, the reason we do that is because that's one of the areas that get people in trouble on brakes. Is you're braking on a downhill, it starts to slide, you dump the lever completely, and then the bike picks up speed real fast, and then when you next put it on, it comes on in a panic. So it's really important to be as smooth releasing the lever as you are pulling it on. Next little step on for that, we're going to start lifting the rear tyre using the brake. Make sure your pedal's out the way so it doesn't clobber you in the back of the legs. And then as I walk along here, same again, apply the brakes till the pads are touching. And now I'm just going to lift that rear tyre up. And what I'm trying to do is keep that rear wheel balanced and even distance off the floor, even though I'm going over bumpy terrain. I'm just using real fine control on that brake lever to hover that rear tyre. It's a fantastic way of building up feel and control on the lever with absolutely zero risk. So the front brake itself, the first part of the lever travel is just moving the pads onto the disc. So when I'm riding, I'm nearly always hovering just in that area, taking up the slack so that when I need the brake, it's immediately there. If you're having to go from all the way out here, there's a lot of travel and a lot of variation. By the time it bites, you're already starting to panic. So we just take the slack out of the lever, get the pads onto the disc before we start applying the brake with any force. Right, that's enough off-bike chit-chat. Now we're going to start putting this braking into action. First thing we're going to do, an emergency stop. So set yourself a stake on the ground, got a little stick in the grass there. I'm going to ride at the stick in the grass. Two little tips that are going to help us with the emergency stop. First, I'm going to put the back brake on just before the front brake. That actually settles the bike slightly before I start putting some force through the front brake lever. Second little thing is my body position. I'm going to be in a nice, strong, ready position, and as I start to brake, I just let my weight sit back slightly to counteract the braking forces. So nice controlled stop there, plenty of force through that front brake. You should be able to really feel the fork loading up and that front tyre biting into the ground. So that's the emergency stop. Good thing to practice on lots of different surfaces, just build up that feel and control on the bike. Now, let's move on to something more exciting. Let's start using those brakes to lift in the rear wheel off the floor, a little bit of trick riding. Now there are two basic rear wheel lifts using the brake. There's the Endo and the Stoppie, for want of a different phrase. We're going to call an Endo a stationary rear wheel lift. So your front wheel's not rolling, you're just lifting the wheel up and dropping the back wheel back down. We're going to call a rolling Stoppie your moving Endo. So we're going to roll along using the brake to hold the rear tyre off the floor, but still keeping that front wheel turning. Let's start with the static version. So for your Endo, two things. Nice flat bit of ground for this, and you don't need a lot of speed. We're just going to ride along. Two things to use to lift the back wheel. One is the front brake, stops the front wheel, makes the rear wheel lift. Second, there's a little bit of spring in the legs. By combining those two, you get a bit more control over it. Start small and build up until you feel the rear tyre as high as you're comfortable to go. Now as you start to bring the rear wheel higher, we're going to have to push our weight further and further back to stop us going over the handlebars. You're always building up gradually, and you'll feel that point where the bike stops feeling like it wants to drop down and starts feeling like it wants to drop forward. If you find yourself at that point, just let go of the front brake, and 9 times out of 10 the wheel will roll forward and you'll drop back onto 2 wheels. Let's give it a go. Hours of fun, brilliant, eh? So providing at this point you haven't got over the handlebars, again recommend practicing this on grass of course, we're going to move on to the rolling stoppie. Rolling stoppie is a little bit more technical, so we're trying to keep the bike moving while hovering the rear wheel. It's actually a really good way to build front brake control and confidence slowing the bike down on steep hills, but it takes a little bit more finesse. Again, build up slowly. Right now we don't want to be pushing our limits, we don't want to be having crashes and going over the bars, so just build it up one step at a time. Now for the stoppie, we do want a downhill. Nice slope makes this a lot easier to learn. Now if you're in your house, you could maybe use a bank down from your garage, or I'm lucky I've got a slope in my garden I can use, but finding a nice gentle slope so you can use the slope to keep you rolling and help practice lifting that rear wheel whilst keeping moving. So straight away, onto the hill, applying a little bit of brake just to slowly decelerate the bike, and then that little pop we were doing with our legs to lift the wheel on the static endo, we're going to do the same pop. And really it's the pop that lifts the rear wheel in this situation more than the brake, because you've got a bit more control with your legs than you have just grabbing hold of the front brake. So ride along slow, little wheel lifts first, and gradually build it up from there. And that's how you learn a rolling stoppie. Now there's an old adage that I myself said a lot when I was a kid, which is if you haven't crashed, you're not trying hard enough. I'm going to come out and say I don't really believe that anymore. I think making mistakes is important. You have to find the edge of your comfort zone, but you don't need to be crashing your brains out to learn this stuff. Build up slow, follow the lessons through, master each element before moving on to the next step, and you'll be able to learn endos and rolling stoppies in a matter of days, weeks, months, depends how often you practice. Get out there, get playing on your bike. It's awesome fun. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to Pedal and Flow and stay tuned for more hot tips.